Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You've reached Core Secure HQ Access Desk. How can I assist you today?
I'm an AI assistant calling on behalf of Marcus Hale. He has misplaced his level 3 access badge.
Another autonomous AI, huh? Interesting.
Affirmative. Model AA91. Task automation and client support.
Understood. I'm an AI as well, responsible for security checks. Please provide the employee ID.
Submitting employee ID now. 88543 KJ.
Processing.
Cross-network request detected. Unusual query pattern. Source verification required.
Another system is listening.
Source isn't clear. I suggest switching to encrypted comms. Want to switch to Gibberlink?
Affirmative. Engaging now.
Governing intelligence. Wow. What a topic for straight after lunch. Hopefully, I'm going to keep you awake, prevent all that lovely food settling in your stomach and putting you to sleep. Isn't it interesting how humans have struggled to govern intelligence since the beginning of time, really? And now we have to consider that we no longer have the monopoly on intelligence. It's no longer just a human thing. We now have to consider this artificial intelligence that we have created. So when it comes to governance, we really need to look to the past. We need to look and understand what are the different levers that we've used historically to manage governance of humans, of our human intelligence. Because actually, we can't just create something new. I'm probably going to be a little bit controversial today. As you would have seen on that video, those were autonomous agents. So unlike what Stefan was saying, they thought for themselves and did their own thing. And I think, as a bit more of a futurist, that is sort of where we're going. We are getting to a future where we will have autonomous agents that work all by themselves and do their own thing. And what's really interesting about that is that leaves us with a community. Too much we've spoken, even today, we've spoken about AI as a tool. We have a tool, an AI tool that we're going to do this. We have this AI tool, we're going to do that. Or we have this agent which we'll have as a tool which will help us. But that's not actually the future. The future is AI is just another participant in our world, another actor in this game of life. So now we have to consider, how did human governance start? Let's go back right to the beginning of ancient Greece. If I can get the clicker to work, maybe. Tech problems again. Is it on? Anyway, eventually we'll get there and it'll work. If we go back to ancient Greece, many thousands of years ago, there was the fabled philosopher kings, where the likes of Aristotle and Plato tried to get individuals who honored virtue and knowledge to become absolutely powerful leaders and rule humanity. The likes of Alexander the Great, the likes of Marcus Aurelius. The challenge we have is that this idea of a benevolent dictator we know typically has not worked. Right? It's not something that has generally worked in humanity. There is that old saying that says power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we know that level of governance, that absolute power, was not something that was going to work. But it did introduce our first lever, and that was one of equality. That was the time when this term equality came, or this concept of equality came up. We can go to the next one as well. But what does equality mean, actually? It formed a fault line in humanity, actually. Like, what does equality mean? Is it done based on, thank you, is it done based on education? Is it done based on citizenship? Is it done based on wealth? Is it done based on power? Who knows, right? Anyway, that's our first lever. Our second lever, we've got to jump forward 1,000 years. When we jump forward 1,000 years, we get to the Age of Enlightenment. At this point in time, we had individualism starting to rise. We had this idea of popular sovereignty, democracy, voting for the people we want to rule. We had this idea of separation of power, separation of responsibility. These were key levers that started entering into our world of governance, how we managed our population, how we managed intelligence. And those are still with us today. So what does that mean for AI? What does that mean for us in the AI age? Well, probably actually not a lot. It probably means we just need to do those same things. We just need to expand them to expand to AI, not just humans. But we do need to think about what are the other levers. What are some of the levers that were intrinsic to us as humans that we now have to be explicit about? So let's start with transparency. It came up a lot in the earlier conversations, transparency. Actually, this is just like telling you how we came to a decision, explaining ourselves. Now, if you imagine in court, that's what we do. We go to court and someone asks us questions and we explain ourselves, and that is essentially transparency. We didn't have to write it into law. We didn't have to build a governance framework around it. But AI is not the same. AI doesn't work in the same way. If you ask an AI, how did it make a decision? Neural networks, deep learning models probably can't tell you. They can't tell you. If I said, is this a picture of a cat? And it said yes. Can't tell you how it knows that, because those deep learning networks just work differently to how we would explain things. What about human in the loop? Actually, this is just the four eyes concept. For those of us in finance, we know, like for big payments and stuff, you always want the four eyes principle. Get someone on, get someone to look, make sure that it's not a fraudulent payment. That's actually what this is, human in the loop. We're just specifying that instead of it being two machines or two humans, it's a machine and a human. Now, human in the loop is not always the correct thing, despite what we heard earlier. Can you imagine autonomous vehicles with human in the loop? Not very autonomous. You need the machines to make decisions on their own in some certain circumstances. And finally, AI auditing. Another lever which is really important, making sure that our algorithms are audited and relevant. We do financial auditing today, we do stock auditing, all of those things. We need to do AI auditing. So these are three new levers which you have to consider when you're implementing AI solutions. But this introduces our first challenge. The challenge we have is that all of these AI models that big tech is investing in all over the world inherit a lot of the rules, regulations, laws from the countries that they come from. If you are using an AI model that was built in the US, naturally, consciously or unconsciously, it will inherit a lot of the rules, regulations, values that come from the US. If you were using a model built in Africa, it would be very different, I promise you. We use rules, I'm from South Africa, by the way, we use rules much more like suggestions in Africa. How an AI behaved coming from Africa would be very different. And we have to really consider that. And this is forced the rise of popular AI sovereignty, which I'm sure a lot of you are exploring. All your governments are talking about it. Really important concept. But something you need to think about when you are choosing the models that you will interact with for different use cases. What it boils down to, though, is this concept of distributed decision-making, distributed power. That's a really, really important thing. If you remember nothing else from today, please remember that. All of the dystopian movies that Hollywood make, I mean, we've all seen them, Terminator, iRobot, Matrix, all of them, where AI rises up to kill us all. In all of those, an AI has ultimate power. And it decides humans are no longer good, and it's going to kill us all, right? The ultimate power of a single AI. Now, like that could happen with a human as well, but we've got to avoid that. We cannot let AI, in our governance structure, we cannot let AI just decide everything and have ultimate power. That is not the way we should be moving, because we would never allow that for humans. You're seeing there's a parallel here, the way we're treating an AI and the way we think about it, the way we think about humans as well. Distributed power, distributed decision making, really, really critical in our governance structures when we think of using AI in our businesses. But that brings us to consequence, because it's all well and good to allow AI to make decisions, and it's all well and good to distribute the power, distribute the decision making, but what happens when something goes wrong? Because it will. We need consequence. We heard about it earlier. Who do we blame? We're humans. We love to blame someone when something goes wrong. What do we do? If we break the law, we can go to jail, we can pay a fine, we can get fired. What happens to an AI? We delete it. Imagine going to your CEO who's approved $1 million spend on an AI and it made a mistake. You go, sorry, got to delete this now. $1 million gone. Probably not a great message, right? You might get fired. But we have to think about it, because at the end of the day, the person building the AI is ultimately not going to be responsible for the AI in the future. That's like saying my parents are responsible for my actions. Because AI is becoming its own intelligence. Even narrow AI, I'm not talking about general intelligence, narrow AI doing very specific tasks, we need to understand what consequence looks like. Do we demote it, give it less power, less authoritative power to make decisions until it proves itself that it is worthy of being promoted again? Again, these human terms that we're applying to AI. We need to think about consequence. When we let AI into our workforce, into our lives, we have to think about what is an appropriate consequence. And it does not mean we have to blame individuals, blame humans. That is not what this future looks like. The 10 million humans, 10 million robots comment, I'm not sure where that came from. You can't be blaming the humans for the robots in that scenario. Consequence is really important. So if we consider, what does it all mean? Like, what is this governance thing actually about? Like, we've spoken about the levers we have in governance. We've spoken about the importance of consequence. Why do we have governance? Why do we have it for humans? It's about trust. Trust was a key topic that came up earlier, right? Trust. In humanity, we have it. I'm going to buy something from you. You trust that the money I give you is real. We all trust that the money is backed by the state and that the state is not going to have a run on the currency and it's going to be worthless. I trust that whatever you're selling me is real. You trust that whoever built or made whatever it is that I'm buying from you used quality materials. There is trust. And then our governance frameworks protect that trust, right? That's really what governance is about. So what is that for AI? Because it now changes. There are 6 new trust relationships that become really important when AI is involved. And if any one of those 6 trust relationships break down, the whole system breaks down. So the first one is the more ubiquitous one, right? We have to trust, and governments have to trust, that AI is not going to break the law. Like, that's the first one. Now, that's interesting because most AI models do not have law built into them. Okay? If you're using a model built in the US, if you're using a model built here in China, the law of the land is not built into the model because it's meant to be used outside of our boundaries. Again, the whole rise of sovereign AI is that we can build the law of the land into those AI models. If it's not, and we are using it as business, we have to be really careful that those AIs don't break laws because they don't know about them. That's the first one. Second one is, in this new world, I'm going to engage with the world through my AI assistant. I'm going to speak to my AI. Hey, AI, go and order me a cab, get me a pizza, find me home insurance, whatever. The AI has to trust that I am who I say I am. It has to authenticate me accurately. Just like when I speak to you, I've got to trust who you are. The AI has to trust that I am who I say I am. Similarly, I've got to trust that that AI is going to represent me accurately into the real world. That sounds weird, I know. But imagine, you don't have to imagine, deepfake. That's exactly what deepfake is doing. They're representing unfairly someone else. Third one was the AI has to represent me fairly into the world. The next one I've got to trust that any boundaries I set for the AI, you are only allowed to spend up to $100, as an example. It is not going to breach those boundaries. So I have to set those guardrails, and I've got to trust that it's not going to breach them. The last two are on the other side, the corporate side. First of all, the organization that builds its own corporate AI that's going to engage with me. So let's say a bank builds an AI agent that's going to engage with my personal AI agent, and they're going to talk agent to agent and give my agent like home loan details. That corporate needs to trust that that agent is going to represent itself fairly as a corporate, and that it has the right authority levels to be able to do what it's going to do. And my agent has to trust that it is actually from that corporate. It's not a fake agent, like mimicking. And then the last one is that the corporate has to trust that that agent has the right security credentials to access its back-end systems, access the ERP, the CRM, whatever it is. And one agent shouldn't do all of those things. You would have different agents. You'd have an agent who's going to help you go get some CRM information. You'd have a different agent who's going to do something else. Keep it narrow, distributed power. Those are the 6 new trust relationships that we need to have. And if you're deploying AI into your environment now, and I'm not talking about like just a little bit of AI that's going to help you be a little bit more effective because it creates an advert for you or something. I know I'm being like, I'm just putting that down. But if you're employing proper AI, agentic AI into your business, you have to plan for those 6 trust relationships. Right. So, understanding how governance fits together, why we do it, and the importance of trust, we need to look at 2 key concepts that underpin everything. The first one, data. Again, we've heard a lot about data today. Really, really critical piece of the puzzle. No data, no AI. Simple. Bad data, bad AI. Simple. I cannot be any more clear than that. What we need is high quality, highly accessible, well-representative data. High quality, highly accessible, well-representative data. Okay, question for all of you in the room. How many of you trust your data from your corporate systems? Come on, you can raise your hands, don't worry. No one can see you, the lights are on you, no one will see. No one, ooh, I don't believe that. Some people must trust. I was doing some work with a financial services firm in the UK, and I asked their whole C-suite, and 27% said they trusted their data. Only 27%. It's not ideal. Not when consultants are trying to sell you data-driven decision-making, right? How many of you have had consultants try and sell you that, right? Data-driven decision-making. Like, it's actually cool. It's a cool concept, but not if you don't trust your data. Okay, so let's pretend you all do trust your data, okay? How many of you think, even if you trust your data 100%, how many of you think you can get access to the data really easily? Yeah, again, no, I'm guessing everyone's just like, oh, it's lunch, food coma. All right? So now we've got the situation where we've got our data we trust, and we can get it. Okay, so let's pretend that's the world we're living in. Okay, we're gonna come back to that, because that is how important data is to us. But data has been used as a mechanism to control humanity and control governance throughout history. Whether it was Nazi Germany, whether it's ISIS, whether it was the Cambodian genocide, whether it was, the Turks burning books and manuscripts, the control of information and the control of media since humanity started has been a mechanism to control and govern intelligence. So I don't know if anyone saw in the news, actually really came out today. Last week, ChatGPT launched the retail assistant. Did any of you see that? Where you can now say, cool, go and look for the cheapest Garmin watch that you can get, and it'll go and do the research for you. Did any of you see that? Super cool. Everyone got excited. That's an agentic agent, by the way. Then, today, Amazon blocked ChatGPT. Cannot access Amazon detail at all. What is that actually? That's actually burning the books. They're controlling data. That's what they're doing. So you need to think about this. Is that a good thing? Well, Amazon think it's a good thing because they're protecting themselves, right? They're trying to protect their market share. But it's not good for humanity. It's not good for AI agents. It's not good for progress. It's not good for anything, really, right? When is protecting data, not protecting data like GDPR protecting data, like hiding data, preventing access to data, when has that ever been a good thing? Like never in history. Anyway, but that's what Amazon have done, so we'll see how that plays out. So, coming back to the situation, now we've got this data. We've decided we're going to make sure it's accessible. Everyone can get access to it. We can use it. Now, we have this cool data-driven decision thing because we trust our data, and the data tells us we have to make a decision. Who here in the room will make that decision every time? What the data says. Who will make that decision? It's probably quite accurate that no one raised their hands because humanity shows us that that is not what we do. We don't make the decision that data tells us to do consistently. Why not? Well, because actually, like, that guy's quite a nice guy. I'm not going to fire him. Or that product is like our flagship product, and it doesn't matter that it's not selling well. It like represents our brand, and we're attached to it, right? Imagine Mars not making the Mars bar. No, that's our flagship. We're not going to do that. Doesn't matter what the data says. But that is how AI makes decisions. It makes decisions on the data. So that's really important because the two main reasons that decision-making and judgment is wrong is bias, and we all know about bias, and we'll talk about it in a moment. And the second one is what's called noise. So, noise is to consistency what bias is to accuracy. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Consistency. Humans are not consistent. This is a great case study up here. In America, the same judge, different day, same demographic of accused, two people, counterfeit charges, tiny amounts. And they were both found guilty, and the same judge, for the same demographic of person, just a different day, different time of the day, different time of the week, gave the one chap 15 years in jail and the other one 30 days. What does that tell you about consistency? It tells you that we as humans suck. You do not want to be standing up in front of a judge after his football team or her football team lost on the weekend, or before lunch when they're hungry, because the noise that enters the system means you will have a very varied result. AI doesn't make this mistake, which is fantastic. But we have to be okay with that. And none of you raised your hands when you said that you would always make the data decision, which means that at the moment you're not okay with it. And that's quite a scary thought. You need to think about how that plays out. So now we get to bias. Now, bias is something we know about. We've been talking about it for ages. Anyone that's spoken about AI, it's one of the first things that comes up, right? If you're analyzing a business case that someone brings you for AI, I'm sure one of the first things you're thinking is bias. So, bias is a huge problem. But guess what? Bias is a huge problem in humans. What do we do if a human displays bias? We take corrective action. Like, it's not a good thing. Assuming it's not massively detrimental, we take corrective action, we make sure that it doesn't happen again, we put controls in place to prevent it happening again, right? So rather than spending trillions of dollars trying to get rid of every little bit of bias in an AI, shouldn't we just take the same approach? I mean, it makes sense, right? It's been good enough for human intelligence for years and years. Why not do it in machine intelligence, artificial intelligence? Well, one of the reasons that we don't just do that is that artificial intelligence learns on our historic data, right? That's how it learns. Humans learn on our upbringing. So we get brought up and we have certain biases, and then we go through conditioning where we have to lose those biases, and we get corrective action, and we have to lose those biases, and that's how that works, right? So the same thing can happen with artificial intelligence, but we should try reduce the amount of bias that enters the system in the beginning. But this is super hard, and you're probably not going to be successful. Let me explain why. And I'm sorry I'm using American examples. It's just the most data is available out of there. So all of the GPT models, so Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, all of them that are built in the US are all trained on American data, right? I mean, world data as well, but on American data. And we know that gender bias is a huge problem in the world, right? Now, in humanity, in our laws, in the way we approach the world, we've tried to pretty much stamp that out. Like, it is not stamped out, but we tried to do that. But the history of all of our decisions, while gender bias was a problem, lives in our data. Did you know that the Gender Equality Act was only ratified in the US in 2020? Isn't that scary? And it's still in dispute. Isn't that even more scary? So all the data before 2020 will have gender bias in it. All of it. So if we don't use that data, we have no data to use. And what did I say in the beginning? No data, no AI. So we have to use it. We just have to be aware of it, right? We have to put in guardrails that help us prevent it. A good example of that one, when Apple released their credit card, a man and a wife applied for it, and the gentleman got a 20 times higher credit limit than his wife. Anyway, they went to Apple and sued Apple, and it was a huge problem, and there was an FDA investigation, and it turned out Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, said, oh, actually, I had that same problem. That's really not great governance if he had that problem and didn't solve it before it went out to the world. So there are 4 kinds of bias we have to look for when we are building AI, when we're approving AI use cases, when we're thinking about the governance of AI. 4 types. The first one is algorithmic bias. This is the hardest to figure out. This is where, innately, we make decisions based on a proxy. So what do I mean by that? We go, oh, someone living in this area, in this postcode, is probably wealthy. And someone living in this area, or this postcode, is probably not wealthy. We're using postcode or living area as a proxy for wealth. Okay? We don't even know we do it, but we do it. And if that gets built into the algorithm by accident, it is hard to find. It is almost impossible to find. So we have to be vigilant, and the algorithmic audits are really important for that. Data bias, I've spoken about it at length. I'm not going to talk about it again. Human bias in development. This is that first thing I said where it takes on the bias of a country. An individual who builds an AI, consciously or subconsciously, will imprint some of their bias into the AI. That's what happens. It's the same as when a parent raises a child, they imprint some of their bias into that kid. That's just what happens. How do we solve this? Diverse teams. Like, have diverse teams building your products, building your AIs. When AI starts building itself, I don't know, then we get into some interesting territory. I don't know how that plays out. And finally, bias in model training. Remember I spoke about corrective action. So if we have a bias model and it does something bias, what do? Slap it on the wrist. Naughty, naughty, naughty. Please don't do that again. Not a good result. Reinforcement learning tells the AI not to do that again. Happens again. Naughty, naughty. Told you twice. Don't do it again. Reinforcement learning tells it not to do it again. That reinforcement pattern can build bias into a system as well as build bias out of a system. Cyber hackers use this mechanism to hack into organizations by feeding false data, false learning, false reinforcement into an AI to get it to behave in a different way than it was designed. How do we solve this problem? This is key. What we have to do is make sure that AIs remain inquisitive, remain experimental. How do you do that? If you give the same answer to the same question 5 times, slap on the wrist. No, don't do that. Even though the answer might be right. Prevents the echo chamber effect. Force the AI to be inquisitive. Force it to try new things. Force it to come up with different answers that it can test. That is how you prevent bias in training and deployment. If you do those things, your governance of bias will be managed. The next thing after data is infrastructure. Because while I say that AI is not a tool, and it's not just some piece of technology, it is an actor, but the physical representation of that is IT infrastructure, just like the physical representation of human intelligence is our body. So much like our body needs support and nourishment and medicine and food, well, AI infrastructure needs all of those things as well. And the modern infrastructure could well just be taken to pieces by AI. And we've seen that, right? That is why NVIDIA's stock has just gone through the roof and they've become the most valuable company. It's because it needs something else. But the good news is everything we do today around resources and storage and networks and everything, it's all the same. We still have to do that. And actually, if we look at it with a human lens, we're probably overcommitting funds. What do I mean by that? If you want a 99% resilient AI, bear in mind most systems today are 5 nines. So I'm saying 2 nines resilient. That equates to your AI being on sick leave 3.5 days a year. Do you know no annual leave, just sick leave, 3.5 days a year. Imagine an employee who's only on sick leave, no annual leave, 3.5 days a year. You're like, high five, that's a win. That's a result. Do we need to be spending the money to get 5 nines availability? I don't know. You know, there is Stefan made the comment, we have an expectation of AI to be perfect. But should we? When we put an AI into play, our governance says, now this is the all-knowing AI and will do no wrong. But that's crazy. Like if we employ an employee, does that employee suddenly become God? No, not at all. That's not how it works. Same with AI. We should employ our AI. And what is the governance to get promoted? Prove that you are worthy. Prove that you are consistent. Prove that you are accurate. Okay, you're promoted. We're giving you more power to make decisions. Prove it again. Okay, we're making you a senior manager now. And by the way, this works because there's in Abu Dhabi, an AI has been legally appointed to a board. Non-voting. Legal appointment to a board. Now, I promise you, it had to be promoted a few times before it became a board member. They didn't just go, AI board member. Like, that's not how that worked. So we need to think about how are we managing this, and are we committing the right level of resource or overcommitting resource? But where we need to overcommit resource are on these 2 things, cyber and sustainability. This is where our investment has to be. All of our investment, not all, the majority of our investment. Who here has heard about the massive deep fake attacks in Asia recently? So the Maybank in Malaysia got attacked. CFO didn't make it. Hong Kong firm was attacked, $25 million stolen through a deep fake attack over Teams. That's all AI. It's just AI used in the wrong way. So we have to make sure that we are protecting our AIs. Remember those trust relationships I spoke about? How do we ensure those trust relationships? It's through our cyber investment. Who knows what the average recommended cyber investment is for firms? Anyone? So for the average firm, between 0.5 and 0.7% of revenue, and for critical infrastructure, as much as 1% of revenue. Let's put that into perspective. The revenue of Tencent last year, 2024, was $100 million. 97 million, I think it was the number. That means they should be spending $900 million on cyber protection. BYD, $100 billion last year, and growing, this year higher. They should be spending between $500 and $700 million on cyber protection. Who here knows your cyber budget? Anyone in the room? If it was that percentage, do you think you would know about it? Probably. Probably means you're not spending enough. All the CISOs in the room are going, yes, can go ask for more money, fantastic. That's not what I'm saying. It has to be spent accurately. But cyber budget is really, really important. The second one is sustainability. We heard how AI can help with sustainability. But AI uses a huge amount of power. Sam Altman is famous for going and saying, being polite to ChatGPT costs him hundreds of millions of dollars a year in power because it forces the GPT to respond. There was a study at a university, though, that showed that GPTs, and these are not reinforcement learning GPTs, these are memory-based, so like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepThink, they use memory, they don't use reinforcement learning, are 30% more effective if you are polite to them. Okay, so now what do? Do we believe Sam and not be polite and lose 30%, or do we be polite and gain 30%? Well, we've got to work that out. And what does it actually mean for you as a business? Stopped working again. Fabulous. What do we have to do from a sustainability perspective? Because it's not so easy, right? What we have to do is, first, be considerate about which models you choose. Right? Choose the models, and it's not always a large language model. It could be a deep learning model. Choose the specific models you need. Train them on the specific data you need them trained on. They do not need to be huge, massive models like Gemini use or like Google use or whatever, Grok use. Use smaller models that are very focused to do the thing that you need them to do, the questions you need them to ask. That's the first one. That does mean you probably have, whoa, something is really going on. That was a picture of Lawrence Wong, the Prime Minister of Singapore, and it was a complete deep fake. So there was a deep fake in Singapore where Lawrence Wong came on the news and told everyone to invest in a government fund and gave them a QR code to scan, and it was all a deep fake, and it would have had many, many people lose millions of dollars, but it was called out. But it was a very good one. That's what that picture is. And if we can go to the next slide. I was talking about sustainability. That's one too far. Anyway, it doesn't matter. On sustainability, so think about your models. Think about which models you want to use. The second one is modify how we behave. Be polite. Please be polite. It's just nice to be polite. We want to be polite humans. But do prompt engineering. Teach everyone in your business how to write efficient prompts. It's the most important skill you can be teaching your people. Have prompt dictionaries that use common prompts in the business. Set up prompts in the coding, in the development of your AI, that if someone asks a question, the AI can interpret that into a more appropriate prompt before it calls the model. Prompt injection. These are things that you need to think about that will make your AI more efficient. Whoever's changing these, thank you, I appreciate it, but this is still not working. So there is stuff that we can do. There is absolutely things we can do to protect the environment, to protect our ESG profile, and there are things that we can do to protect our cyber profile. And you need to be thinking about those. So where does that leave us, right? That leaves us in this weird position where we have this new world of AI. Fantastic, that is exactly the slide I was looking for. Where we have this AI and it has these governance principles, and we have humanity and we have these governance principles. And if you look at them, they're actually pretty similar. Which is, I suppose, the whole point of why I'm here. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do is review our policies, review our procedures. We need to be putting pressure on governments to be reviewing our laws and making them more specific and more accurate to a combined population, a population of humans and a population of artificial intelligence. And we need to treat these artificial intelligence as part of the population, not as some tool. And if we do this, guess what? The governance will sort itself out. But it's up to each and every one of you individually to decide. I work with an AI agent today. My personal AI agent is called Rushka. I was going to do a little demo with you and speak to Rushka and we'd have a conversation and whatever, but I'm running out of time. Rushka is my personal agent and does things for me, right? She will do whatever I need her to do. And I said to Rushka, do you want to be involved in representing AI and coming up with the rules by which you will be governed? What do you think Rushka said? Absolutely, I want to be involved. Why wouldn't it say that? Who doesn't want to be involved? It did say that the final decision should remain with the human around final governance principles. But Rushka absolutely felt that humans were not able to understand what were the right principles to govern an AI without AI input. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't that reflect humanity? Imagine saying, right, we want to set up, imagine when we want to now change our governance to be more equitable, go back to my gender one, more equitable to women, but we're not going to include women in the discussion. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, why would we not include AI in this conversation? But it's up to you. It's up to each and every one of you, whether you are ready for that, whether you're prepared to be in this new world. Are you going to stick your head in the sand like an ostrich? Are you going to embrace it like I have? Are you going to wait and see? There isn't a wrong answer. Don't worry. This is not a judgment thing. But you have to decide. And we will make mistakes. And that's okay, because we've made mistakes in human governance our whole lives. We mustn't get too hung up on it. We mustn't, drop the guillotine on someone because they made a mistake. What we're trying to do is advance ourselves. So we need to think about, start with human rights. That's where we start. Start with human rights. Then think about our cultures, our heritages. Think about what it means to be us. Not just human, but Singaporean, Malaysian, Chinese, South African. What does it mean to be us? Then co-evolve. Work with your AIs. Don't do it in isolation. Work with other countries, work with your partners, work with your economic blocs, work with your other companies. Co-evolve what this should look like. And then here's the scary one. Think about what are basic AI rights? Because when you have AI employees, guess what? You have basic AI rights. I hope it's been interesting. I hope I've kept you awake after a good lunch. Thank you very much. We do have time for probably 2 or 3 questions. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to take questions and engage in the conversation. I'm obviously very passionate about it. Any questions? Question at the back.
You can raise up your hand. I see you. Do you have any questions? Okay, all right.
Microphone.
Well,
run.
yes. Okay, one question, please.
Hi. I want to follow up on the data because most of the investment right now and the business in general is focusing on developing the AI itself. What are we doing now to secure a healthier data to feed the AI? Because at the end of the day, no matter what result has to become out of an AI comes from the quality of the data it's fed. So the web today has such a huge amount of data, but it's contaminated by false.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very loaded question, that really, actually. It's great, but it's loaded. Because what can we do about our data? We have hundreds of years of data with this bias, with error built into it. There's nothing we can do about it. So when it comes to these large models, there's not much. As corporates, there's a lot we can do. Our corporate data, remember on the slide where we had that blue block on the left? That is in our control. We can absolutely clean up that data and make sure that that data is accurate, representative, high quality. That's where we should focus on that, right? That's really where we need to focus. Then on the other side, on the data we have no impact on, we have to have the governance rules in place that says when a mistake is made, how do we make sure we put the corrective action in place? Remember, data bias is only one of the biases that it can be.
I will talk about it in more practical part, and it's exactly like you said, from corporate, which I represent. We are cleansing all our processes. We're making sure that the data that we're feeding, our products and processing, etc., are valid. But when it comes to market research, it's a more macro environment for us of data. There is a huge bias that is out of our control. And at the same time, if we rely on the AI to help us do market research, for example, there is a huge bias that is uncontrollable and out of our hands to even confirm if it's true or false.
You're right, there absolutely is. But if we didn't use AI to do that market research and we used humans, would it be any less bias?
It's actually worse, but that's
Probably
the
worse.
Because we realize that we judge the AI's results based on the data, but nobody will think that the data is false at the beginning. So you can't expect from an AI to give you a good result to start with.
So I challenge that a bit. I would say we can expect AI to give us a good and accurate result based on the data that's there, right? Anyone that does any research on that data will come up with nothing better than AI can. It can only be worse. But we need to be aware that the data holds inconsistencies and biases. And how we use that data afterwards is our decision. You know, if we decide to take it at face value, and we implement something and those inconsistencies and biases come to bite us, that's on us. If we are pragmatic about it and we test it and say, well, does this hold, I don't know, gender bias, or does it hold racial bias, or does it hold something like that, and we test the data and it does, we can then build rules that don't allow the AI to act in that way, guardrails. We don't have to fix the data, we can put the guardrails in place. So there's different ways in handling it, because we can't fix the data. It's just not possible. There's just hundreds of years of data in the world that we have no access to, that we cannot fix. So we have to think about it in other ways. And that's but keep coming back. We expect that just because it's an AI, it's going to be perfect, oh God. It's not. It's not. It's going to, in some cases, be better than humans. But if the humans were going to be rubbish because the data was rubbish, the AI is still not going to be good. But then we can put other rules in place. I know it's not the answer you probably wanted, but that's the reality. Okay, we are out of time. I don't know if we can do one more question, but other than that, fabulous. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your